We're here in Chapter 6 of Black Myth Wukong, and it is time to take on the game's final bosses. Yes, we are finally here, and luckily, we here at Direct Gaming have the perfect guide for you on how to take down the first of these bosses, and that is going to be the Supreme Inspector. This dude's no pushover, he can be tough, we got a lot to talk about. As always, these guys are going to be broken down into 3 parts. Personal setup and skills that I had unlocked for the fight, including my armor, tips on how to avoid the boss's attacks and how to counter them, and finally a full run of the boss fight sped up a tad to show you how to use everything you've learned in real time. Let's get started here. Now, in terms of skills, armors, and other things to bring, you should have pretty much everything unlocked, or very close to everything unlocked, especially if you did any of the XP farming that we showed you in the early parts of the game, or if you've done anything in the mid game, or just any video you've seen on XP farming. Regardless, you should have close to everything that you are comfortable with using. You might not have every single skill unlocked, but as long as it's the stuff that you're comfortable with and good with, then you should be good to go. Also, as always, don't forget to go over to your shrines to make sure you upgrade your spirit, whichever one you are bringing, because that is the only place that can be done. Now, in terms of armor though, I highly recommend you take the time to explore more of Chapter 5, even if it's after beating the final boss, since you can simply travel back there via the shrines. You can use whatever armor you personally want, but I went with the Bull King's armor set. One important note about this armor set, however, though, while you can get this armor in Chapter 5, you need a material called Bullhorn Iron. However, in order to obtain this material, you have to be defeating certain bosses within Chapter 5. They're usually secret bosses. So this is why I highly recommend exploring around, doing every little thing that you possibly can. When you finally get the materials, however, though, you are only granted 4, and you need more of that to complete the full set. So if this is your first playthrough, this means you can only upgrade a certain amount of that armor, and you have to go through your New Game Plus to get the full set. 2 pieces each are needed for the head and the body armor, while 1 is needed for the arms and the legs. So what I personally did was I crafted the body, arms, and legs. That took all 4 pieces, 2 for the body, 1 each for the arm. This allowed me to get the 2-piece bonus plus some extra stats for burn and chill resistance. Yes, I know the boss mainly relies on shock for its damage, but a couple of the attacks it does use include fire, so this definitely helped me there. Plus, obviously, just higher defense and everything. It worked out really well. With having 2 pieces attached, you get increased defense whenever you get attacked, which is a nice bonus to have, particularly against this boss. You're going to get shocked a lot, which means you take extra damage just being in that state. So not only do you need to have your shock pills ready, but you need to be able to provide yourself with extra defense, which this armor set does. Transformation I went with was the Golden Long Dragon, and the vessel I used was the Weaver Needle that we got back in Chapter 4. Oh, and finally, I also used the Golden Long Staff for my main weapon, since I was able to go into Pillar Stance at 3 focus points and automatically shock the boss itself. Yes, it does use electric attacks, but it can still be shocked, which is really nice. All right, with all that being said, let's get into the boss fight itself now. Now, I would personally say compared to all the other bosses in the game, this boss can definitely be a challenge. So I highly recommend using this first fight to learn the timing of the moves and get used to the dodges that you'll need to use. Otherwise, you're going to take a lot of unnecessary damage. At the start of the battle, you will notice the boss is probably the fastest among the bosses you've ever fought here. He will obviously do basic sword attacks, wing attacks, shoot projectiles at you, the usual stuff you'd expect from this stuff. But at a moment's notice, it can step back into the air and do things like throwing feather barrages at you, so you need to be able to stay on your toes. Try not to commit to full combos unless you know 100% that you can land them. When you get the boss down to about 80% health, which honestly isn't too hard, this is where the actual fight really starts. The boss will electrify his sword, and you'll notice the arena will get kind of a little dusty. Maybe that's the color blend mode that I'm personally using, but it definitely looked different to me. Once the boss has electrified his sword in the air, it'll actually charge at you, so you need to be able to dodge these to the left or the right at a moment's notice. And try not to get fooled. The boss won't do this once. It will actually do it. We'll do it 2 to potentially 3 times. Usually I found 2, but as the fight goes on, it definitely turned into 3. One of the boss's staple moves is right here that you see on screen. A 3-hit combo with its sword, followed by a kick, which can then lead into a final attack with a sword slash, but a bunch of electrical attacks will shoot at you on the ground. I found using thrust stance was really helpful here after the attack's finished, so you can get a good hit on him, kind of stun him, and then go up and get a combo. This can also lead into using immobilization if you absolutely have to. As with most bosses that we've expected throughout this game, this one of course comes with its own projectile attack. This one can be mostly along the ground, but sometimes it will include the feathers that he will throw at you. Just simply dodge to the side though to avoid the damage, and no harm, no foul. As the fight will continue on, probably one of the most annoying moves that the boss can do is going to be summoning this flaming wheel. See, I told you there'd be some fire moves to deal with, hence the armor I went with. At the beginning, the wheel will simply appear and start spinning around the boss like crazy a couple of times until the boss actually jumps on top of it. Yep, you know what time it is. Dodge the crazy bird on the flaming unicycle. This boss loves this wheel along with its swords, and as you might expect, as the battle goes on, it will start to combine these attacks. But for right now, we're going to focus on just the fire attacks. The boss will love to throw this thing at you, but then it will return, meaning you can't get hit from behind, so you need to watch your back. This boss also loves to ride around on this little unicycle, so trying to hit the boss between these particular moments is not recommended. When the boss does finally stop, however, though, it will use the wheel for normal moves as well. The boss will also finish up combos with this dive bomb style move, where it will combine both fire and static. And yes, you can get both of these effects on your characters, meaning double damage. If at any moment you happen to see multiple copies of the wheel appear like here on screen, leave the boss alone and get ready to dodge / run out of the circle that it's creating. I personally tried to use pillar stance at this particular point to try and avoid it, but you're gonna need some extra stamina to really withstand it, and maybe having 3 charges as well so you can get up higher. I failed, unfortunately, but let me know if you try this out and if it works for you. The wheel does eventually go away, but then it will be called back as well sometimes, so if you find yourself getting hit by a lot of his big combos, maybe use your transformation to avoid some of that damage. Like I said, this boss can be pretty fast and it's gonna feel like you can't hit him half the time, but trust me, it's all about patience. When you get the boss to about 40% health, it will actually resummon the wheel, regardless if it had it or not, and create a ring of fire around the arena. You know what this means, things are about to get serious. This is a good chance, by the way, the moment this happens, since it's kind of a cinematic moment, to eat one of your pills the moment you're in control of your character again. This will allow you to refresh things like damage reduction, crit chance, etc. This is also where the boss will start to use 2 swords and the flame wheel all at once. So yeah, you know things are about to get crazy. Out of all the combos I personally saw, this was the one he seemed to favor the most, at least when fighting me. The boss will start with the swords and do a couple of swings at you, some dashes, the normal stuff you'd expect, but then loves to finish it up with the wheel, which can kind of throw you off because he's using your feet to deal both shock and fire damage to you. Again, this is why I recommend having the shock pills and then having the armor to help deal with the fire resistance and obviously keep the shock off of you. Remember as well, if you see your armor on fire, make sure you're rolling so you can extinguish it. Most of the same moves that we talked about beforehand are still here, just with a little bit more mix-up. As I've stated many times before in this video and other ones, use as many pills as you possibly can, or even change your brew up a bit so that every time you use your potions, you're able to get more defense, attack bonuses, etc. You're going to need this. They all stack, which is really amazing, so take advantage of it. Notice all the symbols underneath my life bar? Yeah, that's why it's not doing as much damage as you possibly could. As with any bosses we talked about probably since chapter 2, getting 3 focus points so that you can stun the boss with a heavy attack is highly recommended. Plus, it will then allow you to get an extra combo on the boss, and heck, maybe even get a 3rd combo if you use a mobilization in that particular order, or whatever order you want to use. It's up to you, of course. Otherwise, that's basically all the attacks. It may not look like much, but a lot of it's really going to come down to your skill of reading the boss, dodging, and knowing when to use your moves. Also, again, abuse pills. They are there for a reason. They are in the game. Use them. They help a lot. Don't be afraid to take them when the boss flies up in the air. You do get a few seconds, which can easily pop them. Just make sure, though, that you do check your life bar, because if there's no symbol there and you thought you ate it, probably means you did not. So just keep an eye out for that. As I stated in the beginning of the video, I did go with the Weaver's Needle for this particular fight, as it did help me, as it kept attacking the boss over and over again. But if you are finding his attacks to be too strong, switch from the Weaver's Needle back to the Wind Tamer that we got back in chapter 2. This gives you a ton of damage resistance, so it can help you in a tight spot. In fact, the more I think about it, since this is a flying enemy, this will probably help you out quite a bit. Now, here's a full run of the boss fight, sped up a tad to show you how to take the Supreme Inspector down. As always, learn the attacks and patterns of the boss to make it easier. It's okay if this takes a few tries. Me personally, it took me about 5 tries. If you enjoy the guides and the like on the video shows us that you enjoy this type of content, and don't forget to check out our other Black Myth Wukong guides and content along with the other videos in the top right corner and pinned comments. Thanks for watching the video. I've been Talon with Direct Gaming. I hope you have a great day and week, and I can't wait to see you all in the next one. Johnny.